And he says, yes, I'm a fallen god into the world of conflict. So he taught what? To abhor and avoid at all costs strife and war and suffering. And he was a vegetarian and practiced love as the redeeming virtue that will allow the soul to reconnect to its higher element and achieve gnosis. But it is in Plato that we get a full-blown theory. And I have to spend a little time with Plato here because Plato is fundamental and archetypal theory for the entire rest of Western esotericism. Anyone who reads Plato reads about reincarnation because the theory is full-blown in Plato. And this is the primary source for us in terms of the whole history of Western esotericism. And it's interesting to track this because in early Plato, there is no reincarnation. And then he starts to develop his theory of reincarnation, and then in the Timaeus, he develops a full-blown cosmic framework for it. So you can actually trace the history of the development of the idea within these texts. Though I do want to say this, Plato himself never claims to remember his past lives. And so he seems to be building on the teachings of others rather than on some experiential basis. And his theory is mythopoetic. He doesn't really make it purely philosophical. He tells a lot of stories and mythological aspects to amplify the idea. So it's a somewhat inconsistent theory within Plato. It depends on which text you're reading, but I'm going to sort of summarize it sort of briefly for you. So, earliest text, the Gorgias. What happens here in this text is that he makes the distinction between soma and psyche, soma being body. So body and soul separate. The soul, or suke, goes down into Hades, where it is judged by Minos, one of the gods of the underworld, and that's the end of the story. So there is no reincarnation. The soul and body separate. The soul is immortal, and it goes into the underworld, is judged, and hangs out with Achilles, just as Peter was telling us yesterday. And, those who live righteously, as he says, righteously, and who are philosophers, when they die, they do not go down to Hades, they go to the Isle of the Blessed. And so living the good life, the Platonic life, means you can end up going to the blessed, while all others become shades in Hades. Okay, so no theory of reincarnation, right? This is the early Plato. He's just reflecting what would be the conventional Greek ideas of religion. But now go to the Meno. In the probably, we don't know the exact historical order of these texts. It's probably close to this, though. Because in the Meno, he makes a traditionalist claim. He says, ancient priests and priestesses teach that the soul is immortal and born again after 8 years in Hades. He's quoting some kind of a tradition there that's out of the priestly tradition. Was it Orphic? Probably it was Orphic. It probably was the Orphic tradition, which had priests and priestesses. And so the theory there is after 8 years in Hades, then what? You're reborn back into the world again. Why are you going to Hades in the first place? To be purified. You have to understand that in this Greek context, Hades is a place of purification. It's not really suffering. It's not like a hell or something. It's a place of purification, transformation. You go into the earth, you're transformed, you're purified, and you come back and get another chance. So here we start seeing a development. And Socrates, who's in this dialogue, says, yes, this is correct teaching, because they're discussing it, And he says, we can prove it. He says, and the way we can prove this is that if your soul is really, truly purified, then you will remember your past lives. So he makes an appeal there to the personal participatory experience, that if you purify your mind and heart, recollect, that's the term, to recollect, and recollect, then you will be able to access your past life memories, and you will be convinced yourself through this recall of past lives. So, and he also introduces in this text another theme which is going to run throughout the entire history of Western esotericism, which is the pre-existence of the soul. When was the soul created? When was the soul created? When the body is created? That doesn't work in reincarnation, right? Because there's many bodies in one soul. So the theory is the pre-existence of the soul before any body is created. So from the very beginning, so to speak, the souls were created. All souls, all of our souls were created at the very beginning before time ever came into existence. And then through time and creation, eventually souls start to be embodied, and then they go through a process of reincarnation. So this is the theory of the pre-existence of the soul, which is going to become a critical issue in Western Esotericism. The psyche is created before the body. Just introducing the theme, you know. And then we come to the middle period, which is the Phaedo, for example. And here you can just see the theory is just developing. At death, the soul travels to the lower world, is instructed in many mysteries, and may escape rebirth. May escape rebirth. So you go down, you go into Hades, but if you have the correct knowledge and have been clearly instructed, and this is starting to sound very Orphic, you know, you have the instructions, you have the initiation, you can escape rebirth. And he says, though most are reborn back into the world. And here again we see the doctrine of recollection is brought up. Remembering past lives will prove the truth of this teaching. Also, we get a more strong expression of dualism here. This is the actual phrase he uses in the text. What's the relationship between soul and body? Like how do they go together? And he gives an image which is not, I'm sure, what most of us would think. He says, the soul is glued to the body. Okay? That's what he uses, the word, and the word is glued, just like, you know, regular glue. The soul is glued to the body and is stuck, so to speak, there. And through life it must suffer all of the woes and pains of human existence, and you must loosen the glue, so to speak, in order to escape and to leave it. So that's that soma sema idea. You know, the world is a prison kind of idea, and soul is entrapped in the world, and punishment is based on actions in the life of the individuals, and the good soul, when they die, there's a guide that comes to meet them, and the guide leads them through the process of down to judgment in Hades, and stays with them to protect them and bring them back into the world, into a new rebirth. And those who are living a bad life and are behaving badly don't have a guide when they die. And what happens is they wander aimlessly in Hades, not knowing where they are, lost and disoriented, and it takes a long time for them to come back because of this disorientation. So there's a kind of reward and punishment motif here that develops. What about does that mean everyone comes back? No, Plato addresses that. He says, and however, the unredeemed, the utterly lost, are sent into the lower realms of Hades, which is Tartarus, where what is described as a place of boiling mud, fire, and suffering. And they're sent all the way down, and they don't come back. So there's the origin of the idea of hell. It's right there in Plato.